Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this AdoptUSKids webinar titled Equipping Foster Parents to Actively Support Reunification. My name is Britt Cloudsdale. I am the coordinator of the family support team at AdoptUSKids, and I am so pleased to have Mikey Franklin joining us. Mikey is the supervisor of recruitment and training in foster care and adoption for Washoe County Human Services Agency in Nevada, and we're really excited to have her on to talk about what her jurisdiction is doing to prioritize the development and support of foster parents so that they can adequately prepare foster families to support reunification. I'd also like to introduce my fellow AdoptUSKids team members that are on the webinar today. We are joined by Mary Boo, who's the manager of the AdoptUSKids support team, and then also by Tracy Surginian. She is the director of capacity building and engagement at AdoptUSKids. And so you might hear their voices throughout the webinar. If I could have everybody take a minute to unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves to everybody who's on the webinar. Mikey, if you would go first, if you would just say hi to everyone.
Hi, happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you. Mary, would you say hi to everybody?
I would. Thanks, Britt, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Awesome. And Tracy, if you would just say hi to everybody, just in case you end up talking.
Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for joining.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining. As we said, we know you guys are very busy. Before we get started, I wanted to take us through some housekeeping notes here. This is designed to be a 90-minute long webinar, and that does include time for questions that we hope you will submit through the questions pod that's in your GoToTraining, GoToWebinar control panel. We are recording this webinar, and we are going to share that recording with you. And it'll be posted on the AdoptUSKids YouTube channel within the next 7 days. And everybody who registered for this webinar will also get a link to that recording. So if you have friends or colleagues who registered for this but weren't able to attend the live event, they are going to get a link to that recording. Your line is going to be muted throughout the webinar, but we do hope that you will participate we have a poll question for you guys and a couple of interactive slides for you guys to interact with later on. So we hope that you'll participate with us in that way. We hope that you find this educational and interactive, but please also know that you can use the questions pod to chat with us if you're having any technical difficulties or anything like that. We will try and answer those questions that come in around that as well. Before we get started, I do want to make sure that everybody is aware that you're going to be receiving an email from AdoptUSKids Engagement that we really hope you'll take a couple of minutes to answer. It's a survey with evaluation questions in it that we really value your feedback on these events that we host at AdoptUSKids. We take that information from the evaluation and we use it to make our future events better. So if you would just take a couple of minutes after the close of the webinar to answer that survey via email that you're going to be receiving from AdoptUSKids Engagement. Okay, and with that, I do want to share just a little bit before we get started about what AdoptUSKids is. So AdoptUSKids is a national project of the U.S. Children's Bureau, and the project is designed to raise public awareness about the need for foster and adoptive families for children in the public child welfare system. And then it's also designed to assist states, territories, and tribes in the recruitment, engagement, development, and support of foster and adoptive families. So this webinar would fall into that second portion of that mission there, where we're helping assist states, territories, and tribes. In addition to our national adoption recruitment campaign that you might be familiar with, which, you know, the PSAs, you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. We also have a national photo listing that has over 5,000 children who are waiting to be adopted that we are hoping and helping to assist in matching with families. We also have a foster care information exchange system where prospective foster and adoptive parents can contact us and get information on the process and how to get started and get linked to the appropriate jurisdiction to help serve them. And AdoptUSKids also offers capacity building and engagement services to states, territories, and tribes. And so if you're in need of any system-specific assistance in any of the topics related to our mission, we would be happy to talk with you about any assistance we could provide to you. We also have a family support team, which I mentioned I'm a part of. We offer webinars like this and other resources to the field that help to guide and encourage systems to build and enhance the support services that are available to foster and adoptive families across the country. And lastly, we also offer a minority professional leadership development program, and that is for current and emerging leaders of color in the adoption field. So if you're interested in any services from AdoptUSKids, we do have our contact information at the end of this webinar, and I would definitely encourage you to reach out. So with that, let's get started by talking about the intended goals of this webinar. So we want to make sure that we're discussing how effectively developing and supporting foster parents, how that positively impacts all of the members of the families that we're serving and of our systems as a whole, right? And we want to make sure that we're providing you guys with some concrete strategies for you guys to use so that you can effectively develop and support foster parents so that they can be best positioned to play an active support role in the goal of reunification for the children in their care. We're also going to provide some concrete examples for you from the field on how different jurisdictions are tackling this challenge, right? Of how they're equipping foster parents to support reunification. And we're really excited to have Mikey on to talk about what Washoe County Human Services Agency has done. And then I'm also going to briefly have some other examples for you from other jurisdictions. So before we get into the real meat of this conversation, I would love to know who is in the room. So we have a poll that we would love for you to vote in. This asks you what your responsibilities are at your agency. And in this poll, you can select as many as apply to you. I know we're not going to hit every possible area of your work, but if you would please take a moment to vote in this poll so that we can know who's in the room with us and who we're engaging here right now. I'm just going to take a moment to give folks a second. Okay. All right. That's close to everybody. All right. I'll just share those results. And it looks like we have a lot of folks who are involved in recruiting and training foster parents, as well as those involved in supporting foster parents. That's fabulous. I'm excited to see supervisors and program managers here as well. And of course, a lot of folks selecting other. I know we couldn't include everybody in here. I do know that in our registrant list for folks who are interested in this webinar, we did have several foster parents who registered for this. So if that's you, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to participate here with us. We hope that you will participate in chatting about some of your needs and the support services that you found valuable later on. I think that will be really helpful for folks who are working at agencies and engaged in this work. So let us move on then. And so let's start by talking about what foster parents need so that they can actively support reunification. Right? So reunification remains the primary permanency plan for children in foster care, right? It is consistently how most children will exit foster care. We know that. And it's also in children's and families' best interest, right? Children have a right to be raised in their families of origin when it is safe to do so. So this probably isn't news to any of you, right? We know the value that our systems place on reunification, and we know how having foster parents who understand and actively support reunification can be so instrumental in reunification being successful. And I know that when we see this in practice, when we see those foster parents that are partnering and supporting birth parents and who are so engaged and invested in successfully reunifying children with their families of origin, often I think our first thought is, oh my gosh, we need more of you. How do we get more of you? How do we make sure that all foster parents know how to do this? We need them to know how to do this. But I would encourage us to kind of reframe that question and reframe that idea and challenge ourselves to ask instead, what do foster parents need from us in order for them to be enabled to actively support reunification, right? So how do we shift from thinking about what we need from them and focus instead on what they need from us? Foster parents, can bring such exceptional value to the teams that are seeking to reunify children with their birth families, and their ability to effectively partner with birth families and to actively support reunification is really deeply connected to the engagement, development, and support that they receive from the agencies and systems that are serving them. So what that really means is it's on us to give them what they need, and so that they really can be best positioned to actively support reunification. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I do want to briefly make sure that we underscore the benefits to families and to systems. I'm not going to spend too terribly much time on this because I think that's something that most folks are fairly familiar with, but when foster parents are effectively supported and developed, there are tremendous benefits for everybody involved in our systems and for the systems as a whole. Of course, for children, we need to make sure that we keep their needs centered, because this is what it's all about, right? So if their foster parents are actively partnering with birth family and are engaged in their plan goal of reunification, we know that they are more likely to successfully reunify with their birth families. So that's huge. That's enormous. We also know that it is in their best interest if they get consistent messages from all of the adults that are involved in their care, be that their foster parents, their birth parents, as well as the caseworkers that they're routinely interacting with. So having those consistent messages, seeing that everybody's working as a team, working in their best interest, this helps alleviate a lot of the challenges and a lot of the stressors that those children experience who are in foster care. And we know that that is a really stressful experience for these kids. It also, I think, can really help us to think about this when we're thinking about the developing and supporting families so that they can actively support reunification, that even if the plan goal does not work out, even if reunification doesn't work out in the end, and we do end up having to turn to another permanency plan for that child, it still has benefits for that child because those connections with birth families still matter, and they're more likely to be maintained if that partnership is already in existence, right? If that foster parent is already actively partnering with that birth family. Of course, the benefits to birth parents, if they have a foster parent who is partnering with them, that means that they have additional supports and potentially additional help in developing their own skills so that they can successfully reunify with their child and successfully care for that child. And we also know and hope that partnership continues even after the child goes home, and that natural support, that additional natural support that foster parent brings to that birth family can potentially help that child, can prevent reentry of that child into foster care. And then again, even if reunification doesn't happen, those continued connections continue to be important throughout the child's life, and those connections are more likely to be continued and maintained after permanency. Of course, for foster parents, that's who we're talking about today. We're talking about their development and support needs. And so if we're doing our job, that means that they see how they fit into this team of people who are working so hard to achieve positive outcomes for kids, right? They are, if we are effectively developing and supporting them, they feel better equipped to manage the many challenges that they may experience as a foster parent, and feel ready to take on the many roles that we're asking them to take on. They also are, if they're effectively supported, that they are more likely to be able to handle their own emotions and reactions during periods of stress, during periods of grief and loss and transition. For example, if a child is reunified with their birth family, that a lot of times brings up really complicated emotions of both success and loss. So when foster parents are better prepared for that, and better supported during those periods of transition, then they're better able to cope with their own emotional challenges and become more resilient caregivers at the end of the day, which means that they are hopefully then more likely to continue in their role of foster parent for our systems, which of course then brings us to the benefits to our systems overall. If we have adequately developed and supported foster parents, that means that less of them are burning out, less of them are leaving our systems, and we have a more robust pool of resource families, of foster families, to place children with who are going to know what it takes to actively develop and support birth families so that these kids can reunify and go back home. And so when we're talking about this, you've already heard me say this a couple times now. We talk about active supportive reunification, right? And so I wanted let's take a moment to talk about what that is and what that looks like. And I want to contrast it with passive support of reunification, right? So a foster parent who passively supports reunification, they don't undermine the permanent goal of reunification, right? But they're maybe not working actively toward it. They don't necessarily see their role in the overarching plan goal of reunification, right? They feel like their role is to provide loving care for the child, which is a really important piece of what they need to do. But they don't necessarily feel like it's that they're a part of the team or that it's their responsibility to help with this plan goal, to help move this child back home, to help really dig into the work that's involved in that. And I think really when it comes down to, they understand that reunification is a required part of our system, but not necessarily understanding the full scope of why, right? Of why reunification is something that our systems put first and foremost and that we value. And so I think that as we talk about the difference between passive and active supportive reunification, we're really talking about the difference between properly developing and supporting foster parents so that they understand this role that they're about to play, right? So again, it's on us. So a foster parent who is actively supporting reunification is taking those extra couple of steps, right? They're rather than understanding reunification as something that needs to happen first, that it's something that we pursue first, and let the chips fall where they may. It instead is something that they understand is in the child's best interest, and that they understand that they're committed to doing what's best for the child, even if that involves loss or complexity for their own selves and for their own families, which that's a tall order. They also have a clear role on the team that is working to reunify this child. And again, you can see how that clearly falls on our responsibility as those working with these families, because we're the ones that are defining their roles in these teams, right? And so if they don't feel like they have a place, that we need to make sure that they feel like there's space for them on that team, and that they understand that they are a really important part of the teams working toward reunification. They're also, if active support of reunification looks like a true embrace of shared parenting, and that they view themselves as a really important resource for the birth family, and in turn view the birth family as true experts on the child's needs and on their care, right? So that viewing that partnership is really a two-way street, as that the birth parents need them, and they need the birth parents in order to effectively care for this child. So I think when we talk about the difference between passive support and active support of reunification, it's important to think about all that foster parents are expected to do, right? They're expected to do so much, and engaging fully and actively in supporting reunification, it may feel like something that they should do and that they want to do, but it may feel like a really impossible task for them, right? It may feel like something that requires such a significant undertaking, and they're not sure how to start it or how to engage in that. And so that's really where we need to address their support needs, so that they can partner with us and so that they can actively support reunification. So as we seek to adjust, and as we seek to move our agencies and our systems towards developing and supporting families, so that they really can truly partner with birth families in support of reunification, we need to ask potentially some tough questions, right, of ourselves and of our systems. So I think the first one is, does our recruitment messaging emphasize reunification as a system-wide value and priority, right? So how do we talk about foster care and foster parenting to the public? I think this really, when we talk about how we when we talk about recruitment, a lot of times we're talking about recruitment in terms of both foster parents and adoptive parents simultaneously. We kind of lump those together, and that's not inherently problematic, but we want to talk about it to make sure that folks understand that those are two pretty different paths, and that foster parenting is not just a stepping stone on the way to adoption. We need to be really careful about that. We also want to ask ourselves, what skills and attitudes do resource parents need so that they can actively partner with birth parents? There are some really concrete skills that you need to have in order to effectively partner, right? And so we're going to talk about some of those skills later on. And I think it's in turn really important to think about, how do we know if we're adequately preparing families for partnership and reunification? How do we know that we're developing those skills that we identify that are necessary? Are we collecting data on and investigating if our training and our development is working? Are we doing anything like that to make sure that we are actually doing what we claim to be doing in our training processes? So those are really important questions to consider. We also, we need to think about, how are we supporting foster parents through the challenges that we know that they're likely to encounter, right? Overall, we generally know what challenges foster parents are likely to experience on this journey, right? And sometimes we even know when foster parents are more likely to experience challenge, right? Like during periods of transition, as you're transitioning a child back home. That's a really stressful experience, a really emotional experience. So are we putting support services in place? Are we putting the support services in place that they need? And are we putting it in place at the time that they need it? It's a really important question to ask ourselves as we're trying to do better in this area. And we also need to look at what feedback loops do we have in place, so that we can continue to learn from foster parents about what their needs are, and about how we can meet those needs to help them effectively partner in reunification efforts. So are your foster parents engaged in, are you asking them about their challenges, about their needs? And if you are there answers to those questions that you're asking them? Are they actually resulting in changes to your agency or changes to your system, right? So if you are learning something about a new need that they have, where does that information go? How are we addressing those, what we're hearing back from foster parents, to make sure that we are being proactive and making sure that new prospective foster parents learn what maybe the ones that that are engaged in the work right now, maybe they say that they didn't learn. How are we making sure that that doesn't happen to the next crop of foster parents? So I want to, if you wouldn't mind, please take a moment to type into the questions window in your GoToWebinar control panel. Let's think about, what development do foster parents need to actively support reunification? And what I mean by that is, what skills do they need to have in order to actively support reunification? What knowledge, what attitudes do they need? What do they need to understand about birth parents or about children, or about our system, in order to actually get kids back home? So if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to chat, and you won't be able to see each other's chats, unfortunately, but as you're putting them into the window, I can voice some, and I've already seen some coming in here. They need empathy. Absolutely. They need sympathy. They need a solid they need a solid understanding of the legal aspects of child welfare. That's a really good point. They need a genuine respect and regard for birth parents. Absolutely. They need knowledge and understanding of why reunification is important. Absolutely. They need effective communication, yes, and to understand trauma, not only the child's trauma, but the birth parent's trauma. Yes, that's exactly right. Y'all are doing so well, and there's so many of you, so I'm sorry I'm not able to communicate all of these, but a lot of folks saying be trauma informed, a lot of folks talking about communication skills, a lot of folks talking about empathy and the need to understand what birth parents are experiencing, what they're going through, understanding that people make mistakes and avoiding judgments, compassion and patience. A lot of folks chiming in on a lot of those similar circumstances. So that's so fantastic, you guys. And so I put some here. Y'all pretty much hit all of them, I think. But this is just to name a few on the next two slides. So this is certainly not an extensive list, but yes, we heard communication skills. Partnering with birth parents requires active listening. It requires knowing how to engage with somebody who is in crisis, and it may be a really difficult early stages of the relationship. That they need to know how to manage conflict, right? They need to understand that where a birth parent is coming from, if they're experiencing challenges with that relationship, they need to know how to move through that, and they need support from us in moving through that. I heard some folks talk about coaching skills, right? They need to be able to positively share what they see in birth parents as they are developing new skills, new parenting skills, to be able to say, hey, I saw you using this new skill. I saw you using that in visitation. What a great job. They need to be able to engage with people of different cultures, right? They need to understand that not every culture has the same approach to food or to clothing or to hair, right? And they need to be able to raise their hand and ask for help, right? If they don't understand some of the cultural practices of the birth family, so that they can make sure that child has consistency with their culture. Tons of folks talking about empathy and understanding for birth parent circumstances, so that's fantastic. They also need to understand how to talk with kids and youth about their birth family in a strengths-based way, right? They need to because they need to understand the impact that their words can have on children and youth, and to understand that speaking positively about birth family is really, really important for that child. And a lot of folks talked about education of the impact of trauma and on intergenerational trauma. So I saw some folks talk about the impact of trauma on the birth parents themselves, right? And understanding that the behaviors that foster parents may be seeing are really to understand those through a trauma lens. And then we also need to make sure that they have a clear understanding of grief and loss. I think a lot of folks need additional training and support around knowledge of grief and loss. It is not something, I think it's something we kind of take for granted. It's something that we all understand and know how to move through, but it's really not true. We really do need education and support around grief and loss to understand everybody, to understand your own unique process with grief and loss, and to understand how grief and loss may be impacting your ability to connect with somebody else, or to parent these children that you're charged with parenting. So that's a really important thing for folks to keep in mind. And they also really need to have an understanding of the importance of visitation. And I'm really excited for you guys to hear about what Washoe County is doing from Mikey around visitation. But they need to understand the purpose of visitation and to have support around it. So as you can see, I think a lot of times we think about these things. We think that some people come to the table with these skills or with this knowledge base, and some people don't, right? And it's really important to remember that knowledge can be built, and that skills can be taught, and that people are overall educable, right? And that it just because somebody has come to the table with a certain idea about who birth families are that may not be right, that may not be accurate, but that doesn't mean that that they're stuck in that space, right? We can do what we can to educate that person, to bring them closer to being able to partner with birth family more effectively. Okay, so same task, y'all. Think now about the supports that foster parents need to actively support reunification, right? So what assistance do foster parents need? What services do they need? If foster parents are overburdened with the day-to-day care of a child without support, they're going to have a really difficult time in engaging in actively supporting reunification. So let's think about the support services that they need. Mentors was the first one that I saw. That's fantastic. Yes, foster parent mentors is a really can be really effective, especially if it's done by other foster parents, other peers. I see need to be included as a team member. Yes, absolutely. And support groups. Let's see. Lots of peer support mentors, support groups, lots of you saying same thing on that. That's fantastic. Social workers to listen to the foster parents about concerns. Absolutely. To be able, yeah, to really be able to actively sit down with them and engage them in that. Respite is on here. Yes, absolutely. Having actual time to breathe and space to do that. They need supportive social workers who are willing to listen. Absolutely, absolutely. Training and shared parenting support of foster parents by the social worker, and the licensing worker and the social worker to work together to process through feelings. I like that. I like that idea that one of the main supports that we can provide is having effective communication between all of ourselves, right? All of our systems that are working together. Cooperative caseworkers. Several of you saying that idea. That's very, very cool. Fantastic. Open communication. Well, great job, you guys. That's really awesome. So again, this is by no means an extensive list, but we did, pull out a couple of things, and y'all, I think, covered all of them already. But I think a huge one is assistance with service navigation. A lot of times we're kind of, once they have a placement, kind of throwing them to the wolves, not purposefully, but on, just because it's really difficult to navigate our systems, and it might not be as difficult for us when we're living within our systems, and it's much harder to do from the outside. And so any assistance that we can provide around making sure that they have the services that they need, not just for the child but for themselves, can go a long, long way in best positioning them to actively support reunification and partner with us and with birth family. We mentioned this before, but mediation and assistance with navigating relationship dynamics with the birth family is really important. We're going to talk a little bit later about a jurisdiction who's engaged in icebreaker meetings. That's one way to help facilitate relationship building between birth parents and foster parents. Peer support, we saw that many of you mentioned peer support, and peer support can take a lot of forms, but it's important that we think about peer support not just for the parents but also for the children. Peer support is very effective at helping folks to normalize their own experiences, right? It feels a lot better to just to be around people who have the same lived experience as you, and that is important for just as important for the children as it is for the parents. And then, of course, therapeutic services, not just for the children, but for the parents as well. Services for youth, right? So camps, that type of thing. A lot of folks mentioned respite. I think important to make a distinction here between both planned and emergency respite, right? Because it's important to have a plan of when respite's going to happen, but we all know that crises come up. So do they know what to do? Do they know how to access emergency respite if it's even available at your agency? And then, of course, material support. And I do want to draw a distinction here. We're not necessarily talking about the regular maintenance payments that foster parents receive. We're talking about stuff over and beyond that, because we know that doesn't go very far. So, stuff like school supplies, clothing, stuff like that. If a foster parent gets a new placement for a child who comes with the clothes on their back, what are we doing to make sure that they have what they need for the next day at school, and for the next day, for the next week, for the next 2 weeks before their board payment actually comes through, right? So with that, I want to pause a moment and see if we have any questions before I transition over to Mikey. And so let me just take a moment. Are there any questions that have come in so far?
Sorry, there are. Sorry about that. This is Mary, and I'm struggling with my mute button. There are a couple questions, and I think one you're going to cover later, but I'm going to put it out there. The first, though, is when birth parents are not able to articulate or value the foster parent being a resource, do you have suggestions on how you can support them and let them know they are still valued?
That's such a great question. And I think we've gotten questions like that in other webinars that we've done in the past as well about, we're focusing so much on how we can best position foster parents to be, engaged with the birth family. And the fact remains is that sometimes it's not really reciprocated. I think that we need to take a look at the mediation and relationship supports that we can offer to birth family. And I am going to talk some about what Bridging the Gap is doing in Virginia, specifically around navigating those relationship dynamics. I think it also really comes down to the support that their individual worker or workers are providing to the foster parent, because we know that there are going to be some aspects of their journey that we can't control, and so I think peers can really help in supporting foster parents through that, in navigating themselves through those relationships that are maybe a little more filled with strife than we would hope. um, and I think also that really just, as much as we can educate all parties on the impact of trauma on children and adults, and how that impacts our ability to communicate with other people and to engage with other people. I think sometimes just knowing that there is a reason behind um, those challenges, I think, can be really, really significant. But yeah, we are going to talk more about specifically navigating those relationship dynamics later on.
And I'll just add to it, if you don't mind, that I think one of the things is, if you value foster parents in general, in terms of, do they have a seat, do they, one of the commenters, right, make sure that foster parents know they're a part of the team, not the decider, but making them a real part of the team so that their input is listened to. And if you're not following up on it, you're letting them know why. Are they, do you have foster parent review boards? Do you have foster parents engaged, so that in general they know the system is valuing the foster parent role, because that can cross over into these efforts as well.
That's a really good point. Those system level changes that we can make. Awesome.
And so, we do have a couple. I have one comment, but I wanted to, if you wanted to respond to it.
Sure.
That I think sometimes workers are scared to talk with foster parents when it isn't something that they don't want to hear. When they really want to hear the good and the bad, no matter. Sorry.
Right.
Anyway, so they want to hear the good and the bad. Well, they need to hear the good and the bad, no matter what is going on. It's just without a good comment to share.
Yeah, that is a really great comment. So we're saying that that workers might be scared to say something to foster parents that foster parents may not want to hear. Am I understanding that right?
I think so.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah. That's oh man, that is such a great comment, and I think that's something that our staff training and staff development can really be tackling here, because I think that's completely correct. That we're nervous to address things with people. Everybody is, it's not hard to see why you would want to avoid conflict or avoid hurting people. Like these are normal things. These are normal reactions to engaging with other people. And I think that comment really strikes home at that foster parents want accurate, complete information, and that it is our responsibility to provide them with that, even if it is going to be a challenging conversation on top of it. Great comment.
Right. And again, I think ties back into that other one about, if they're feeling valued at other times, then they're more able to hear things when there are challenges. And like all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, we have a couple other questions coming in. So how do we, as social workers and direct support staff, work to avoid frustration with and better educate foster parents who are not interested in supporting reunification, and sometimes even go so far as to sabotage it, sometimes for understandable reasons? So
that's a really great question. I think a lot of it comes. We have to pull the process all the way back and think about how we have been messaging about what the role of foster parents is in our system, and about and making sure that all staff are clear on what that message is, so that we can have really consistent communication with foster parents about what the expectations are. And I think, a lot of it, as you already said, Mary, a lot of it has to do with, are we providing them with complete information? Do they feel like a valued member of our system? And are they understanding that even if they may disagree with some of the decisions that get made, because that's got to be really challenging, because they're the ones caring for these kids, and they, even when we can hear their input and they provide input, sometimes it doesn't shake down the way that they would like to see it. That's got to be incredibly challenging, and to know that a lot of times the pushback that we get from foster parents around that, a lot of times might have to do with them not feeling heard and supported, even more so than feeling upset that their particular point of view was not, it didn't end up being where the team went ultimately. I do think that we're going to talk later on about really concrete strategies that folks can take to try and keep those lines of communication open. But yeah, that's a huge question.
Yeah,
Mary, you can feel free to talk more about that if you'd like.
No, I mean, I think you said it, and I think that, and we're getting some other comments just about, how do you help a foster parent continue to feel valued when parts of the team doesn't value what they say or experiencing? And again, I think that gets back to, if somebody, or what do you do when they don't agree with it? And I think again, part of it is explaining to them why decisions are made, and not just saying no or not taking the input and never getting back to them. So it's about that feedback loop of, this is how the decision was made. And so again, I think it's about that open communication, which again, we know takes time, so we don't want to underestimate that. I want to add, somebody made the great comment that there's a huge issue for some of these things in supervision, that the role of supervisors is so important for
That's
workers
fantastic.
who have to, if workers are struggling with this, that's where we really need supervisors to be on the same page and to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important that we address the role that burnout plays in all of this. Burnout both for the workers and the supervisors, and for the foster parents, right? It can be easy to fall into being jaded in this work. It can be really easy to decide that, oh, they're not going to engage anyway, and so why try? Or they're not going to listen to me anyway, so why try? And I think um, whatever we can do to put supports in place, both for foster parents and for staff, to address those issues surrounding burnout. I think we could address a lot of challenges in our systems if we were to address those issues.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to ask, there are a couple of questions again that we have, but I think we're going to get them, one on visitation and one on grief and loss, but I think we're going to touch on those. So I'm going to hold those, but I'll ask one more. And again, I might be putting you on the spot because I don't know if you have an answer, but a challenge I'm often facing is that as a private agency social worker, I'm making efforts to include and respect the foster parent's voice and ideas, but the state social worker does not value, solicit, or permit their input.
So I would like to put a pin in that, because actually Bridging the Gap Virginia is something I'm going to talk about later, and that is a specific program that really addresses those communication breakdown and trust and partnership issues that can exist between public and private agencies. And it's one approach, certainly. So I don't mean to say that it is, what people should do, but I do think that that is something that a lot of systems can relate to, and a lot of folks at private agencies versus public agencies, I think a lot of folks can relate to that of, one side feeling like that they're not being valued or being told everything, and it's a function of how a lot of our systems operate, and I think that there is a lot of what we're talking about here in what can we do to make sure foster parents are valued and supported and developed. It also we also need to be thinking about what are we doing to make sure that different parts of our system are talking to each other, the different parts of our system are valuing each other, and that we view each other as all members of the same larger team to keep kids safe and to reunify kids when possible and to get kids quickly to permanence, right? These are the kind of overarching modeling that we do around relationship building and development of those relationships is, I think, critically important. I know that's not really an answer, but I do think that hearing about what Virginia has been doing may be helpful.
Great. Let me ask. I'm gonna ask one more question. Then I know there are others, but we want to hear from Mikey and hear more program examples. But one other specific question about how to, and again, maybe this is a question that Mikey can answer instead later, but how do you help the foster parent establish boundaries between themselves and biological parents when dealing with a relative or a kinship home?
That's such a great question. And I think let's put a pin in that one because we do have a specific strategy on that later on, specifically about kin. So Mary, will you remind me about that one if I keep moving on?
Yes, I'm tracking all of my saved questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so with that, this is a large group, which we're really excited about. And so I know you guys have tons of questions. We're going to get to as many as we can. I also should have mentioned at the beginning that if we don't get to your question, if we don't have time, we are more than happy to follow up with you. We get a record of all of the questions that were asked during the webinar, so we'd be more than happy to follow up with you separately if we don't get to it as well. So, I will again introduce Mikey. Mikey Franklin she works in Washoe County Human Services Agency in Nevada, and so we're excited to hear about what Washoe County has been doing around this issue. So, Mikey, I'm going to mute myself, and you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I work for Washoe County, and I do supervise recruitment and training and some placements. And so I wanted to kind of talk about how we got involved. We're a QPI site. About 6 years ago, we made a trip to Florida. A group of us, about 6 of us, went there to see what they were doing there. They were working with the Youth Law Center, and the conference or gathering took place in a kind of like a visitation center with resources, and that alone was eye-opening for us. And so we joke about that we all went to Florida and we drank the Kool-Aid and we came back to tell everyone else. And I was hoping, I wrote this down, I took a bunch of notes, so hopefully I'll stay on track while Britt was talking, but I was thinking about the question somebody asked about people being scared to say something to the worker, being scared to say something to the foster parent. And this is one of my favorite examples of how I describe QPI. So quality parenting is, I summarize quality parenting with that it's all about relationships and relationship building. And so my example that I like to give is a worker goes out to a foster home and to visit her child, and she sees the child and he's in the same outfit that the worker always sees him wearing. And so my non-QPI example is they don't say anything and they come back and they tell the licensing worker that the foster child's always wearing the same outfit. They don't think they're buying them clothes or whatever. And so then the licensing worker calls to address it with them. And then they get upset because they were just out there and they didn't say anything. And their response about the outfit is that their dad or mom or somebody gave them that outfit. It's their favorite outfit. And so they wash it and they let them wear it because it makes them feel better about their parent. And so I use that example that the relationship and the transparency that we can have with each other can avoid so many conflicts. And so that's just like my favorite example to describe QPI and the communication that is important between everyone. So we came back from Florida after foster parents hosted our meal out there at the conference. We saw that they had several donations that communities and businesses had given to foster parents, and that they were able to visit in this really nice building where here are, it's an office building. Parents would visit sometimes multiple children in a small room, and it's just not comfortable. We all came back with our eyes open because foster parents were involved in policy making changes in their systems there, and it was just like duh. Why are we not doing these things? We brought back normalcy, and that was a big part of us moving forward and making some changes. I think a lot of things that Britt talked about with being a part of a team, and foster parents and birth parents are the experts on the kids, and making sure that all of the rest of us realize that and keep that in the center of our mind. And so we started making small changes that were very feasible. And through that, I'll talk about kind of our visitation and things. But we started making these changes, and things have gotten so much better. And although it seems like it was a while ago, we feel like we've done a lot in a short amount of time. So some of the other notes that I took down about like the messaging. So we've really switched our messaging. We still are Washoe County, it's Human Services Agency, and our program is described as foster care and adoption. And I think that does cause kind of a miscommunication or misconception in our community, because we do get a lot of families coming to us who are wanting to adopt. So although we have a high volume of people who call, and we're really, we're so lucky in that sense that we have people calling all the time who want to foster or adopt. We take the time. My recruiters and trainers are very responsive, and if they're not around, I will respond, and we talk to everyone that calls in, and we explain up front before they even come to orientation that our goal is reunification, and that there are times when our kids become available for adoption, and there are kids that we are looking for adoptive homes for. But if they are coming to us wanting to adopt a baby, it's not likely to happen. And we explain why, and we take that time to talk to each family so that they know up front the information, and they're hearing that clear message throughout the process, throughout their training, throughout their home study, and they're getting the same message of reunification is our goal until it's not anymore. And like Britt said, the benefit to everyone that the child's going to know, the parents are going to know that you did everything you could do to make them be successful, and when they just weren't going to be, that you were there, or someone else was there. So along the same lines as our messaging in the past, or in the recent year or two, we've focused on getting people in the door however they can come. So if that means they want to donate jeans and underwear, they can do that. If they want to volunteer, we have opportunities for them to do that. If they want to mentor, and then foster, and of course adopt is kind of the last piece. And so our messaging in our community is that exactly. We will take you however you want to come, and that's opened a lot of doors for us, especially our mentoring program. One of our recruiters has taken that on and really focused on the piece of connecting our kids to somebody important so they have someone in their life. And our media has become involved and has really focused on that, and it's become huge for us. And on the slide there, you'll see there's a recruitment video link that we're not going to watch because it's not super long, but it's a little long for today. So it's to reach out to other community partners or businesses and share that message that there's things that you can do to help, and that could be hosting mixers, that could be having an orientation at your church, that could be donating food to events that we hold. It could be anything. And so we made that video to share with other businesses to show them how they can become involved. And then the more that word gets out, the more we have people that are coming to us and calling us saying that they want to help kids and families in our community. So like I talked about, when we are giving that messaging personally through that relationship building contact on the front end and having the same message, then at our orientation, all of our orientations include a foster parent and a trainer. They're giving the same message at orientation that if you came in the door wanting to adopt, here is the process, and that it may not happen for you. It may not happen in a certain amount of time that you're interested in. And so they're knowing all of the information up front. If we don't believe that they are understanding or that that's their main goal, we will meet with them separately and maybe try to focus them on a private agency or something like that, because we want to make sure we don't get into a situation where they're brokenhearted or families aren't able to reunify because of like sabotaging or something like that, or that they're waiting for a long time because they want a child that's legally free in a certain age range. And so they are receiving that messaging at orientation, throughout training, and from all of our workers as it goes on. So we have those conversations, and we try to have them to do some respite to kind of get an idea for our kids, and if we need to steer them another way, then we do that too. Maybe they can do respite, or maybe they want to mentor a child. So our pre-service training, we've revamped that sometime after we became involved in QPI. We have invited birth parents. They're not at every single part of the training, but we've had them there so that they can talk about their experiences. Some of our birth parents have reunified with kids. Some of them lost kids and haven't didn't reunify with them, and so they are there to talk to our foster parents and show that they can share their experiences, and they can talk about what they have liked about being in, what was helpful for them when they were in our system and what wasn't, and they're able to share that. Our training has become much more trauma focused, and so we really work with our foster parents on understanding where our kids have been through, and keying in on that piece of reunification being the cornerstone of our system, and that's always the goal from the day we remove kids. It's to reunify until that court plan is not. So another piece we talk about during training is the visitation and the expectations of our foster parents to provide visitation and to be a part of that. Shared parenting, we refer to it more as co-parenting here, and that they're going to be doing that, and it's an expectation. And so all of our foster parents, it's not a surprise when they get their license that when children are placed with them, that their expectation is to co-parent with our birth parents. And some of the things that we've put into place with this kind of shift in training and recruiting and in our licensing is that so when a child gets placed in a home, they already will know when they're going to visit their child. So they are given a piece of paper with a date and time at the removal, and they know when they're going to see their child. And then the foster parent's given the same. So it's a set day and time, so they know exactly when they're going to be able to see them, and the foster parents are responsible to have them there at that time. When they come to their first visit, it's at our engagement center that I'll talk about in a couple minutes. They show up, and we have engagers at our engagement center, and they will talk to the foster parents, and they'll talk to the birth parents about what to expect from their child, what to expect from each other. They do it. It's similar to an introduction. I mean, an icebreaker, where they are trying to build that relationship on the very first day of. They're not here to take their child. They're not here to judge you. They're here to support you. they want these visits to look good, because as we've learned through our fostering relationships through visitation, is the better those visits go, the more likely that the parents are going to continue to visit, the more likely they're going to work their case plan. And so we have implemented these things in the hopes that that will increase our reunifications. And so so they have that visit set. We have a group I talked about a little bit, the foster parent co-trainers, and so they also serve as liaisons. So they share their information with the people coming out of training. So if they're nervous about their first visit, they can call them. We can make personal referrals to other foster parents who we think would be a good fit based on either the birth family or the children's needs or their experience, and we can connect them. We're actually, it's pretty informal at the moment, but we are making a pool of paid foster parents that will do that. And that's part of, they'll be working through the engagement center and assisting with visits, assisting with reunifications, helping coach new foster parents, teaching the fostering relationship through visitation model, helping over at the FEC with engaging families. They might, help a family with supervising all of their kids, out in the community. So we're hoping that that will become. We had some extra funding, and so we're hoping to pay those foster parents to do those things. Right now, we just look to the ones who innately do this amazing co-parenting, and we count on them, and they're amazing and helpful. Our licensing workers are also really resourceful. They are there to listen to our foster parents. We have a liaison who does our placements, who's a support to them as well. So I talked about the Family Engagement Center, and when we came back from Florida, we of course wanted a place for our families to visit that wasn't our office, and that became a goal of our upper management and directors, that this was something we wanted to do. And so they found some money and they found a building, and so we were able to open our engagement center 2 years ago, I think in the fall. And I should have grabbed the numbers, but I think we hold up to 30 visits a day over there, and it's a welcoming place. They're over here at our building. We have metal detectors, and it's not super colorful. And the engagement center was designed to be very welcoming. It's a happy place. There's the engagers that I talked about who are there to help make sure that the visits are going well, that they are focused on the child. We ask that the foster parents participate in the visits. That doesn't mean they have to be there for every single visit. They have to be there for the first visits. We want the child to see the co-parenting. We want to see them to see the support. The engagers talk to our foster parents and reiterate what they learned in training about giving feedback to the parents. Look at the way he looks at you. Look at how great he's playing and reacting to you, and giving them that positive feedback to our to the birth parents. And we hope that they want to come back. Our some information about the engagement center that we've put into place. Workers are not allowed to go to the building to talk to their clients about case plans. We can't have the police go there. It's a safe place, and we want the parents to visit their kids no matter what. And so no business takes place there, just visits. Also, one of the things that I'll probably get some questions about is if a parent is under the influence and they show up to their visit, or they tested positive recently, we don't hold that against them. As long as they're being safe and the visit's going fine, we will still allow the visits to happen. And we have people all around all the time who are, keeping an eye on things. They're not necessarily supervising the visit, but they're assisting. Britt's showing some pictures. This is our engagement center. That's the front there. Those are our playrooms. There's game rooms for our older kids. There's interactive rooms. The idea is that parents will play with their kids. There's a lot of books, games, foosball. There's all kinds of things to do. That one there on the left is our kitchen. We have a full kitchen and a pantry. If you go over there at 4 o'clock today, there will be families cooking meals. Some of the families have gotten to know each other and share meals together. They bring food in. Some of the kids have started cooking in there, and it's just like a really happy place to be. And we're so happy with how those are going. And part of it is the facility, but part of it is just the shift in supporting parents and really making the visits more approachable. Let's see. As we all know, or like I said about the better the visits go, the more likely that parents will continue to visit their kids. And we have foster parents who do everything from pick parents up and bring them to their visit. They share numbers at times, and I mean, all of our foster parents are kind of on the spectrum, but as far as how involved they're going to be, but the expectation is that they are involved, that they are supportive, and that they work and they co-parent for the best interest of our kids. We don't have any documentation during the visits, so nobody's sitting at the door taking notes. We also have a reminder system, so they receive a message reminding them of their visit, and it seems to help a lot. Before they were kind of on their own, and now with us prompting them to get there, sometimes we'll pick them up. We'll make sure they have transportation to get to the visit. So a few other things that I wanted to just add about it are the mentors I talked about. Some of them are volunteer to do this. Some of them are going to be paid to assist with that. Our support groups, we used to host a large support group, and now we have some support groups that are broken off, and some of them are focused on some are like Mom's Night Out, and they get together, moms get together. Some of them we have are focused on, like we have a transracial adoptive group. We have some faith-based groups, and we are always able to go and provide input to those if they want, or training. So I'm not sure. I think I feel like I talked really fast, but I think I had so much to say. So I'm going to look at my notes and make sure I didn't miss anything.
Mary, are there any questions? I'm sure there probably are.
There are. There are a couple specific questions. Then there's some general ones. I think I'll still hold so we can keep going. But so first is, and I'm sure everybody's thinking this: how is your visitation center funded?
So, I will have to find out exactly how it's funded, because I think it came from different areas. We have had a lot of donations and a lot of services donated. So, we have someone who said, we want to fund, like a church, we want to fund the play yard, or we want to do the furniture. So, I will definitely figure out more specifics around that, and then I can share that with everybody.
Wonderful. We can help make that happen. The other one is it wasn't just about the center, but who facilitates the first visitation? And I know you talked about people who help with that. And then I'm wondering, my own question is it different? Is that facilitation different if they meet at the center versus the first visit somewhere else?
So the first visits are always going to be at the Family Engagement Center. We do have visits that still happen at our office, but that's mostly because the visitation is a few miles away. It's not super far, but it's in Sparks. We're in Reno, so it's just like not 6 miles away or so. And so if we have a family that lives right next to our office, we don't want them to have to go and figure out how to get down there. So sometimes we still have them here, but the first visit will always happen at the Family Engagement Center with an engager there. So they facilitate that first visit all the time.
And do they meet with the foster parents first? You mentioned some of the things that you would share with the foster parents. So do the foster parents come in first and talk with the engager, or does that happen before?
They prepare both of them separately. The foster parents should know and have an idea. So, but they will talk to them before. But the engager will meet with the birth parents and explain, what we're trying to get out of the visit, what the foster parents' role is, and then they'll bring them together and they're basically doing like an icebreaker. What is your child like? What what are the things they should know? And so they're starting that visit for them, but they do meet with them separately first.
Great. That's okay. And we have, again, several more questions. A couple about supervision. One is, what if there are concerns about the parents being around the child and needing supervision? And then, so answer that. Yep, sorry. No, you go ahead.
Okay. So we can provide supervision if needed. The way that the engagement center is set up is there's different rooms, and some families are kind of stay in their different room. Like we have rooms that are focused for babies, and so there's baby type of things in there, changing table and a rocker and things. But some of the other rooms are bigger and it's shared space, and so unless there are super concerns, and it's mostly around maybe something that a parent might say to a child, then there's that would be really the only way that someone would need to sit and supervise. And we try to get the foster parents to help with that, but in a non I'm supervising you sense, kind of like, just being around and kind of engaging, not sitting and staring and judging. And so we just try to have them hang out, or we do have staff over there that can help with that. But as far as other concerns around supervision, because there's people all around, it's not used as much. And when we did switch to this model and switch over to the engagement center, we did realize that there were a lot of our visits being supervised that didn't need to be anymore. There was no reason for it. There were no valid concerns around why they should be. And so that number's gone down a lot too.
Okay, so you still have some that are supervised, but just when needed.
Yes.
Okay. And then a related question, how are caseworkers supposed to know how parents and children interact if they're not supervising the visit?
So the engagers can give the feedback. It's just that the way it used to be is there would be in a small room and somebody would sit outside the door in a chair with a pencil and paper and take notes. And nobody wants to visit with their child with somebody staring at them and writing about them, especially if you haven't seen your child for a week, because back then we might not have got the visit set up for a week, and they cry when they see you and you are wondering what they're writing about you because your child cried. Where this they're all set up, they're ready, they know that their child might cry, they know that that it's okay, that nobody's judging them, that the foster parent's not judging them. And so the engagers and the people there can give feedback to the worker, but they are not going to be sitting and taking notes about they did this or they said this. If there's some type of major reason that they need to tell them something that happened, then they'll do that. But otherwise, they can keep track of that they showed up, and if there was no reason for them to report back, then they assume that the visits are going great. And they will give feedback about, hey, they're doing wonderful, they could probably go somewhere else or be in the community, and they will give that feedback.
Great. Okay, we have more questions. I'm going to take a couple, but then I think we want to take a little time. How did you have any struggles? I'm going to ask this question, so I'm going to combine two questions. Did you have any struggles getting people on board with this practice, either the long-term foster parents or the courts or other people concerned about these changes, or the, no visitation notes, parents being able to be there under their influence, or just again the role of foster parents? Did you have any of those barriers, and how did you deal with them?
Definitely. There were all of those barriers. I think that there was a lot of pushback from, yeah, workers would say, well, how do I know? And I think that once we realize what is it that you're looking for and what is it that you really do need to know, they couldn't really say. We also involved the courts in all this process, and so they were a part of it and are very supportive. We tried to get all of the stakeholders involved throughout this shift. So I think the bottom line is, once you really get to the bottom of what is it that you're looking for, or what is the issue, there isn't any. This is what's best for kids. And so if you come back to the best interest of the child, it's going to be this, and the reunification and the support that we're showing, it's going to be this.
Great.
So I have
Okay.
an answer a little bit for the funding. So VOCA money, county money, child care quality money. So victims of crime, I can't remember what the A is, assistance?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Okay, let me ask one more question, then I want to turn it over back to Britt. I think the one is, do you have a specific training that you use for the engagers? I'm going to combine two questions again. A specific training you use for the engagers, and then what is the compensation and length of commitment for your foster parent liaisons?
So it's fostering relationships through visitation is the model. And so they basically are just going over that with them. And the compensation for the foster parents who we are trying to contract with will be $25 an hour, and it'll only be up to 5 hours a week.
Okay. And I lied. I'm going to ask one more because we've got it
Okay.
twice. Have you seen any difference in your reunification rates or adoption numbers? Have you seen any sort of outcome changes or retention of foster parents? Any outcomes you've seen?
So it's kind of across the board. We just started tracking our engagement center numbers, and so I don't know that we have that set yet to be able to say here's exactly the relations we can see. We had our highest record number of adoptions last year, which was really kind of unrelated, I guess, to that piece, because the engagement center would have been open, but our numbers of foster homes have actually decreased, but that's in relation to the number of finalized adoptions. So they adopted the child and then they closed their home. We also had a really high number of relative foster homes who, close after the child reunifies or after they might adopt the child. So but again, I think we'll have some great numbers coming through with the engagement center and the reunification soon. And so hopefully we'll be able to share that information as it comes.
Great, thank you. We actually have a couple more questions, but I want to turn it over to Britt, and then we'll try to get them in at the end. And I know we're probably willing to stay on a little longer
Yes.
if others want to stay on. And again, we appreciate all these great questions. So.
This is fantastic engagement. This is so great. Thank you so much, Mikey. We really appreciate you sharing what you've been doing. And as Mary said, we can stay on for a little bit longer, but we do know that folks may need to jump off. We're going to make sure that everybody gets a copy of these slides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the next couple of programs that we have to showcase here for you, because I think that's what most folks want to hear about. And then I'm going to refer you back to some publications that we have for some concrete tips and that kind of thing that you will have in the slides. But so I want to talk about a program that unfortunately is no longer operational, but was in New Mexico, and it's a really interesting model. But Project Revive, it was a statewide support project operated by La Familia Incorporated in New Mexico, and what they were seeking to do is to normalize and recognize the grief that families encounter as a part of being involved in the foster care system, and really focus in on that grief and loss aspect. So the project really recognized that often the successes of foster parenting result in some form of loss for the foster family, especially when children reunify, and so they really wanted to address this. And so they have specific training on grief and loss, which was a 3-hour training that was offered several times a year throughout the state, and parents can attend as often as they wanted, and there was child care, and they got credit hours for the training, and the specific curriculum, it addressed, they wanted to make sure that folks had up-to-date and accurate information about grief and loss. Like we mentioned earlier, grief and loss sometimes feels like just something that people know about and know how to experience, and that's not at all true. That people need concrete training and guidance around grief and loss. And so the training itself also sought to inform attendees about how foster families and caseworkers and children, how they interact, and the way that grief and loss can impact communication, because that's what we keep coming back to, right, is communication, and how important that is for building relationships here. So I thought that was really, really important and impactful. And they also wanted to address how foster parents may have their own unresolved or unexplored grief and loss, and how that may impact their ability to parent these children who have experienced trauma themselves and grief and loss themselves. So really cool, important stuff. They also had support groups that had both for children and for parents, and that centered around grief and loss, and also just on building peer connection and support in that area, and that they provided childcare for the kids who were too young to participate in the children's group, in the children's support group. So then you also have respite kind of folded into all of that, right? They also had a telephone helpline, which was staffed by a regional family advocate that helped provide information and support to parents in that region. And those advocates were foster parents themselves who had at least 5 years of experience. And then they also had a private Facebook support group that a lot of agencies are turning to now. I'm going to go through these, and then I'm going to have questions at the end. That's what I think I'm going to do. So I also wanted to showcase Children's Home and Aid in Illinois. Illinois was another QPI site, and QPI stands for Quality Parenting Initiative. I don't remember if that was already said or not, but that is a strategy of the Youth Law Center in California. And so they went through the same process that Mikey described in Washoe County, and they really wanted to address the barriers that exist in establishing good relationships between foster parents and birth parents, and also to overall address their foster parent retention and their placement disruptions. So that's what they were seeking to address specifically, and they found that they have had some good success. They're continuing to evaluate their program, of course, but they're having good success with a foster parent mentoring program. The mentors are volunteers, so they're unpaid, but the reason for they decided to go with this model is that that volunteers could be fluid and kind of move in and out, or do as little or as much as they felt comfortable doing, and they could then they have a large pool of volunteers that can draw from, but that currently they're unpaid volunteers. But the mentors, they're all experienced current or former foster parents. A lot of them are folks who can't take any more children because they're at capacity, but they still want to do more, and they get referred over by their licensing worker. But the key here, and how this relates to everything else that we're talking about, is that mentors must be willing to work with and advocate for shared parenting with mentees. That's part of their criteria for identifying volunteers, which I thought that was a really cool and an interesting way to that the messages that all of the foster parents were receiving, whether it be from agency staff or from these mentors and peers, is that this is a value and that this is something that's really important. So the volunteers, they undergo 7 hours of training, a lot of it having to do with trauma, and then they learn 54 key conversation topics with mentees that they continue to come back to help them engage birth family specifically. So they have these concrete strategies that they use around helping their mentees engage birth family. And then another strategy that they are using to help address address their foster parents' needs are what they call respite villages. And so the purpose of those is to establish some local connections, because in Illinois, they share, a lot of people think of Chicago when you think of Illinois, but a lot of Illinois is really rural. And many foster parents were feeling like that they were the only foster parents in their area, or feeling like that they didn't know who the other foster parents were, how to access them. So they had these respite village events where everybody is encouraged to come out. It's a picnic style event, but they're also encouraged to invite the birth family along, as well as have the kids there. And again, that it normalizes that all parties are here for the same reason, right? That they're all here together, and that they're all a part of this community. We're all working on shared goals, and it just helps really normalize, especially for the child, seeing all of these people there for them, having fun, engaging in a really normal and natural way. So that's another strategy that has been used in Illinois. And then I mentioned earlier bridging the gap in Virginia. And so I wanted to highlight this one because, as we said before, a lot of this comes down to the relationships that agencies have with each other, as much as relationships that individuals have with each other, right? So it started as a pilot project in 2007. With assistance from NEKC Foundation to help families work better together and to increase reunifications, right? That was the goal of the public agencies that were engaged in this. It was several public agencies in Northern Virginia identified that was a major need, and they also were identifying that a lot of their children were placed in homes licensed by private agency providers, so what we were talking about earlier. It is as much about addressing the gaps in communication and trust between agencies as it is about addressing gaps in trust between birth parents and foster parents. So they really developed a unified vision for improving communication, and that all the partnering public and private agencies have agreed on this approach for navigating those early relationships, right, between foster parents and birth parents. And it does center around icebreakers, specifically around periods of transition. I do want to let folks know NEKC has a lot of resources on how to properly invest in icebreakers, right? Because icebreakers are not a one-time thing. They're something that require a lot of planning, that require in order for them to be effective, they are a first step on a long journey toward building relationships, right? And so they got a lot. There's a lot of support available from NEKC on that issue if folks are interested in that, and that is where Virginia got some assistance as well. So, and they, during the icebreaker, they really they're helping facilitate those first communications, and then also really talking about like what happens next, right? Like what happens now, and making plans for the future, plans for the next visitation, and plans for when things get rocky, because we know that that's going to happen, right? And so, and the model, though it has a unit approach, it also really keeps in mind that each relationship is going to be unique, right? Because each individual handles things differently. Each individual needs different things to heal and to thrive. And so you can't put a one-size-fits-all approach to this relationship building, right? It's not going to work if you try and make everybody fit into the same mold. And so they really try to help birth parents and foster parents figure out what that is. Together, right? To figure out what makes the most sense for those individuals. I know we are quickly approaching not having any more time, but I want to pause and does anybody have any more questions before I quickly run through these things.
We do have some more questions that I'm gonna say one person asked earlier about what do we do with foster parents when they have a bad situation um, and the case closes. And I just want to say one person responded to that without knowing that question maybe was asked, but so I often connect with new foster parents and try to debrief them after their first placement. We break it down and see what worked, what didn't. I try to connect them with other foster parents for mentoring. I encourage them to check in with our foster parent support group and our Facebook group. So I wanted to put that out there, but then I also wanted to ask Mikey, um, and Britt, if you know this about the other programs as well, but what about any interviews or follow-up after case closures with the family? Do you do that, and how does that go? So I guess that's, I think, mostly for Mikey, but Britt, also if you know about what others do after case closure or any follow-ups with the foster families.
So one thing I wanted actually to add earlier is we have had icebreakers at different times during the case too. So if things are not going great and that there's a strained relationship, we'll bring everyone back to a facilitated meeting to like get everything out there. Like, how can we make this work better? And so we'll redo icebreakers. Let's start over. Let's let's try to get this relationship going again. So we've done that. When kids leave foster homes, they let our placement worker know, and we don't necessarily follow up with them in the sense of, how did things go? We do ask the worker because we want to see what types of cases and kids that the foster parents would do best with. So what did you think? How did things go? I know our liaison, our placement worker does talk to the foster families when the placements leave as well. And then we do our evaluations, or the foster parents do their evaluations at their relicense too, giving feedback on kind of more general how things are going, and they will add notes too about either specific working with specific issues, and they will provide that feedback. I don't know if that helped answer.
Okay, well, we'll see if there's a follow-up, but the
Yeah, and I don't know about the other programs, but I do know that Chauncey Strong is on the webinar right now, and he offered to have his contact info sent if folks are interested. He was involved in Bridging the Gap, Virginia.
Great. Okay, let me ask. This is another, I think, Mikey question. What do you do when visitation gets changed often and with short notice, or having that, which results in foster parent having to cancel a visit? Is there, do you have any issues with that, with the scheduling, and how do you deal with them?
Yes, we do. So the first visits are pretty much fine because we want to make sure that at the time of removal that everybody knows when they're going to be able to see their child, and the foster parent knows, and that's the expectation, is that they get them there. But we try to, part of that piece and that engagement piece and is getting everyone to be on the same page and hopefully come up with the best plan for the visit that will accommodate everyone. Our foster parents are expected to do the visits, and obviously we don't want to make things difficult for them, but we also want to see the parents reunify. And so if they have a small window, then we really try to make sure that that's going to happen for them. We do have a team of, we call them runners. They run kids to appointments that we try not to use unless we really have to, because we try to tell foster parents during the training, would you want a stranger to pick up your child and bring them to their soccer game, or whatever. And so we try to reiterate to them that this is important for the child, and you being there and them seeing that it's okay and that they're safe and that you're supporting this is very important. And although it might be an inconvenience to to do that, it's the importance that how important it is to the child is the bigger difference.
Great, that child-centered approach, of course, is a great way to do it. I want to return to a question we asked earlier. I think it's up on the slide
Yep.
now for Britt, so it's for either or both of you, which is how do you help foster parents establish boundaries with kin, during visitation, or but just in general, any of this shared parenting that might be happening.
Absolutely. I think that it is really important to give special consideration to kin. Our systems are continually relying more and more on kin to fill our placement needs, and we know that kids often do better when they're in relative homes as opposed to non-relative homes, so the strengths and needs of that population are gonna be unique, and so a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about so far, it the expectations that we have for non-relative foster parents really might need to be adjusted or shifted for kin. I will say that there are some specific training models that are specifically for relative caregivers that do a pretty good job of discussing that really difficult relationship navigation that can be required of kin, and the grief and loss that can come with, if your grandma caring for your grandchild, or if your auntie caring for your grandchild, within that and inherent to that is potentially another form of loss in the family member that had their child removed, and that could maybe potentially feel a lot of different ways about the fact that you are now caring for their child. And so specifically, kin really need training around navigating those family relationships, navigating through that grief and loss. And I think they also need really specific support from us. Certainly kinship navigator programs can help with that support, in making sure that they know where to go for different services and assistance. And then any peer-to-peer support that we can provide that's kin to kin is again going to be really important. One of the models that is currently being that is in use and being evaluated in North Carolina is caring for our own. They are piloting it to 4 counties in North Carolina, and they are trying to see, they're evaluating currently with UNC Chapel Hill of if that is something that is going to help more kin be better able to step up and care for relative children that need it, and also are going to be more able to become licensed caregivers, and then access the ongoing maintenance payments and guardianship assistance that could be available if reunification is not possible. So that's I think there's a lot to delve into there on the importance of supporting kin and of the really specific needs that population has. Any more questions? I know we are 8 minutes past when we were supposed to have ended.
We do, of course we do have others, but
Okay.
I'm going to ask one sort of simple one, and it's a Mikey question. Do you have a certain number of or goals for how often the family will reach out to the bio family to visits or exchanging emails? Is there something specific that you ask of foster parents?
No, there's nothing specific. The visits are specified. Obviously the babies, we try to get as many visits as possible, and but as far as sharing contact information in that, we leave that up to them, but we also encourage them to, what's the worst thing that can happen if they have your phone number, or they can set up a different email. But a lot of our foster parents are who have been doing this are really helpful in sharing that information. We try to encourage them to invite them to things like, your child's going to have a soccer game. Can you come to the soccer game? Those kind of things. So outside of the engagement center piece, sharing pictures, I think it's not, we don't have anything set. We just want them to know that the more is better, and that's just going to help them to reunify even more if they are becoming involved in those kind of things.
Do you have, what is the frequency of visits, or does that vary by case?
It just varies by case. Like I said, with the babies, that we try to do it more often because of that bonding and that initial piece. And then it depends on the plan. Obviously, we have some parents who have to do iWeb visits because they're incarcerated, and so those, are going to be set up a little bit differently. And sometimes, if our parents go outside of the visits that they are doing, because they might visit twice a week at our engagement center, but they say, hey, we're going to be at, the park at this day and time if you want to come, or we're going to go to this community event if you want to join us. And so I think that that's an advantage that we have also made to foster parents is, unless you've been told that you can't specifically for some crazy reason, that we trust you and we know you make good judgments, and that you are the expert and you are a part of the team. And so if you want to invite them to the birthday party at the park, you can do that. And so no, we don't have anything set. We hope that they will see them as much as possible.
Great, thank you. All right, I think, Britt, we haven't answered everything, but I want you to have
Yeah.
time to talk about the resources. So.
Right, exactly. I was trying to cycle through those as we were ending, and I appreciate everybody who stayed on this long. You guys are really dedicated, and appreciate all the questions that are coming in. Um, I we did in this in these slides we have some concrete tips to leave you with. To help you engage foster parents in so that they can properly support reunification. A lot of them are things that we already talked about by talking about all of these different programs. So let me go back here, but I do want to make sure that folks had an opportunity to see them. Using consistent messaging, encouraging positive attitudes towards birth family, ensuring that training includes those skills that we were talking about, right? Making sure that our training really does actually do what it says we're going to do, which is prepare foster parents adequately. And then also, making sure that we have opportunities built in to have that reinforcement of learning of those skills. And I think a great way to do that and to make sure that you're hitting home with your training is to incorporate birth parents and youth into your training curriculum, especially birth parents who did successfully reunify and can kind of, that nothing helps to dispel those myths and stereotypes better than a birth parent who is the antithesis of those myths, right? We talked a lot about providing opportunities for peer support, and we talked a lot about providing guidance and support around visitation, and then we talked a lot about offering enhanced support during periods of transition and loss. I think all of those strategies combined together can really build a robust system to help foster parents be best positioned to actively support reunification. And then, whatever you can do to incorporate feedback and data analysis into your services. You don't know what you don't know. And the best way to figure out if your services are effective is to collect data, especially from users, or to analyze existing points of data, right? So like foster parent longevity or time to permanence, or percentage of children that are actually reunifying, and studying that information, and then using that information to improve your services at areas where your users tell you that you need services. I'm going to make sure everybody has these slides, but I do want to highlight some publications and as well as our services here toward the end. These are some publications from Child Welfare Information Gateway. Their publication just came out this month on partnering with birth parents to promote reunification. It's a great publication. They interviewed tons of foster parents and birth parents about their feelings about partnership and what partnership means to them and to children. It's really great. I would definitely encourage you to check it out. And then these are AdoptUSKids publications. We just published a tip sheet of the same name as this webinar, equipping foster parents to actively support reunification. So to continue your learning on this topic, I would definitely encourage you to check that out. I've also listed here other publications that may be of interest to you. I know a lot of folks are really interested in what all other jurisdictions are doing, and so Support Matters is a lengthy publication from AdoptUSKids. It has tons of specific programs that are profiled that are all about providing support to resource families, right? So not necessarily just related to helping them support reunification, but all of the different ways that they need support. And I think it can really help systems to really understand, this is how this one agency or this one jurisdiction approached this issue. Maybe we can take some lessons from them and our system in a way that maybe is a little bit more difficult if we're talking about building something from scratch, or if we're talking about more lofty, overarching ideas as opposed to ideas from the ground. And I have a lot listed here. We also have tons of recorded webinars that you might find interesting. They're on our AdoptUSKids YouTube channel. This recording will also be on the AdoptUSKids YouTube channel, and you're going to get a link to it if you weren't able to be on the entire time, which we understand if you were not. We ran over a little bit, and we appreciate your patience with us there. But I've listed some out that you might find interesting. And then I'm going to leave you here by first reminding everybody to please look into your email, because you are going to be getting an email from AdoptUSKids Engagement, and we really hope that you'll take a moment to evaluate this webinar. It really, really helps us to get feedback from you so that we can really improve our events on into the future and make sure that we're giving you guys what you need from us. So on this page, you'll find my contact information. Again, my name is Britt Cloudsdale, and you'll also find Tracy Surginian's information. She's the Director of Capacity Building and Engagement at AdoptUSKids. Please do reach out to us if you have questions, concerns, or interested in any of our services. Excuse me. And then I would definitely encourage you, if you're not already, sign up for our newsletter. You'll get updates about events like this one, as well as publications that are, we publish resources for the field all the time. And so if you'd like to stay up to date on that, please do sign up for that newsletter. Does anybody, we still have a bunch of folks still on, so if there's one last question or anything maybe we want to address. Or not, we don't have to.
I don't see any new ones coming in, so.
Okay. And if we didn't answer your question, we can follow up with you via email, because we are going to have a list of everybody's questions that came through. So we really appreciate everybody staying on, and please do look out for that email from AdoptUSKids Engagement. And thank you so much for being on with us today. We really appreciate your participation and engagement. And thank you again to Mikey and Mary and Tracy for all of your help with this, as well as Rubette behind the scenes. Yay!